Silver may spell Technico. Strongman spells Rudo. Hypnotico, John. Welcome, my babies. This is Vandal Drummond, joined with Alfredo Esparza for episode number 30 of Slammin' Stand on Blog Talk Radio. Alfredo, how are you today?
Did you read that one email you sent about our show? You called Blog Talk Radio something completely different.
Did I really?
You wrote Blogspot Radio or something like that.
Blogspot Radio. Oh man, I'm under the influence of my own delusions.
I think a couple of people must have looked at it and Blogspot Radio. What the hell's
Blogspot Radio? You know, I actually like that better than Blog Talk. I like Blogspot a lot better.
I figured you got it confused with Blogspot. So, you know.
Well, Fredo, I have to tell you, I have never been more pumped. I've never been so excited because after watching UFC and the very next day watching WrestleMania, I had watched absolutely no wrestling in almost 2 weeks. Never have I been so much pumped. And I was wondering, would I be remembering the glorious moments of WrestleMania, Shawn Michaels versus The Undertaker, Chris Jericho versus Edge? And the answer is no. I remember nothing about those matches. Not a thing. Just that they were great. You know, I feel so good. I have no recollection of any of it, and I've never been happier.
I'm surprised you actually watched it. I was going to ask you if you watched it, and I assumed you maybe didn't.
Yeah, and typical UFC, I enjoyed the fights, but I forgot half of them within a week. And then I find myself saying, why did I just pay $44 for that?
And then you wasted another $55 on WrestleMania, didn't you?
I certainly did. Yes. Yes, so I'm learning, you know, that sometimes emptiness is the greatest gift of all.
You're down $100.
I'm down $100, and I will have to say WrestleMania, I recall thinking, hey, this is a really good show at the end of the night. Enjoyable, but if you asked me the twists and turns, the angles and plots of every match, I would just sit here and say, huh?
Well, that's funny you should mention that. Today's our WrestleMania post-show.
Yes, it happened. It happened.
Since you watched it, why don't you talk about it a little bit?
Okay, I'll tell you everything I remember. It was on a Sunday. Anyways,
it's either a post-WrestleMania show or TNA recap. Or
maybe it's a pre-WrestleMania show for 2011.
For next year. Oh, that's
yes.
We could plan.
That's actually more exciting than what already took place.
Yeah.
Anything could happen.
Yeah.
It could be Daniel Bryan versus Shocker next year.
Daniel Bryan versus The Undertaker.
That's true, and The Undertaker will finally lose his streak. He'll play Ernie Ladd for the evening, putting over Ruben Juarez. And, of course, only old-school Los Angeles wrestling fans know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
That's when Ernie Ladd put over a 5'3" Ruben Juarez. And while I might sound a little sarcastic on that, I am not. I thought that Ernie Ladd was an awesome worker in that he stood 6'9", but had no hang-up in putting over somebody who was 5'3", and in fact, I guess took great pride in being able to get somebody over like that. So
that's what wrestling's supposed to be.
Absolutely.
You know, guys being not really. You don't have to thank them for putting you over, but you kind of just stand. You just appreciate. You know, you yourself putting that person over. You know, making him a star.
Exactly. I remember the first time there's a wrestler I knew years ago named Bobby Lane, and he was from a wrestling family. His father was Bobby Pico. His mother was Ann Laverne, sister Marie Laverne. So I thought, oh, this is like one badass character, and I bet you know, he only jobs when he wants to. But in fact, he boasted about being able to do a job and making the other guy look like an absolute killer. And I thought, man, the business needs more people like that who actually take pride in making the other guy look good.
Yeah, nowadays everybody wants the guy who's the star doesn't want to help anybody come up like. Right.
It's so true.
You know, right? You know, it's all parody booking now. Like everybody, one week somebody wins, the next week the other guy wins.
Yeah, and when somebody so-called pushes and gives somebody else a push, it's with a wink, wink, nudge, nudge.
Yeah. And then you think it's, oh, this guy finally made it. Then the following week that guy ends up losing. I don't know, you know.
Yeah, it puzzles me. I guess that's why I don't watch as much of it.
So did you watch Did you watch the 4-hour Ring of Honor pay-per-view on the internet?
No, I didn't, and the reason is I'm going to sound like such an asshole here, but I bought their previous pay-per-view, and I found myself...
Well, you bought a Ring of Honor pay-per-view. That's pretty good.
Yeah, and I'm happy. I got to be honest, I'm really happy to give them some business, and I liked what I saw. It's, it's just, there's so much wrestling, and I burn out quickly.
Well, it's that whole thing about guys kicking out early on every show. Doing the big high spots early on. And it just seems a little too repetitive.
Yeah, I guess that's just where, I don't think it's just me being old school or anything, but I really do think that the opening matches should be a little less, they should be more anticlimactic. They shouldn't be series of near counts. They shouldn't be wrestled like main events. I still believe that.
Yeah, and if one of them does turn out that way, it should be a surprise. Like, oh crap, this match is good. But like every single show, that's the way it is.
Yeah, I know there's a lot of heat on people for having really short matches. Well, here's something I do remember from WrestleMania: the Rey Mysterio versus CM Punk match. A lot of people said it was good, but they didn't have enough time.
Well,
it was nice seeing a short match amongst all those long matches. Yeah. It was nice seeing something that didn't go too long. Quick, entertaining, for the many who are ADD out there, and I'm not just talking wrestling fans, I'm talking the public in general, it should be entertaining. Not every WrestleMania match should be this, the equivalent of a Martin Scorsese flick, just on, keep on. Yeah, it shouldn't. Yeah, they don't always have to be this big work of art. They can just be a match. They can just tell a quick story.
Well, I think people probably get upset because it was Rey Mysterio and CM Punk that got the short match, and everybody else got really long matches. Like, holy crap, another really long. I don't know how long the matches were. I didn't really care about WrestleMania this year. And it's like, how many times can you Triple H?
I'm actually surprised to say I watched, I think, the last 4 in a row.
Yeah.
And for years before, I couldn't even tell you which ones I saw and which ones I missed.
You want to know the truth? I've only seen one WrestleMania, like the whole thing.
Really?
That one we saw last year. That's the only.
The one we saw at Sophia's.
Yeah, that's the only WrestleMania I've seen from start to finish.
And that was actually enjoyable, watching it with somebody who was not was a hardcore WWE fan, but didn't know anything about indie wrestling or Japan wrestling.
Yeah.
It was kind of fun hanging and watching it with somebody who was just this rabid fan. I mean, she loved her Undertaker, she loved her John Cena, and yeah, I thought it was really cute.
Yeah, I think it's just because I'm from a different era and stuff, like growing up around Mid-South and all that stuff.
Same here. Let's face it, Fredo, we're old. We're very old. Always reminiscing on the past and bitching about the present.
We can't sit through 4 hours online watching a wrestling show. I just don't get how. I can understand. Like I don't know how Dave and Brian do that. I mean, they gotta be making a ton of money to do it, but.
There have been times where I thought, gee, it would be fun to do what they do and be able to make wrestling a living, but no, because you have to watch pay-per-views.
Well,
this is what I love about doing this podcast. We can choose to watch everything, or we can choose to watch nothing if we want, where you have to watch those TNA pay-per-views if you're Dave Meltzer or Brian Alvarez, and that would make me nuts, even if I was making money off it.
Yeah, I remember when I was thinking about doing a newsletter, and I thought, man, do I have to watch all these pay-per-views? How much is this going to cost me? And I was like, no, forget this. And then, I thought, man, 3 hours each week. How am I going to wait? I don't want to watch this stuff all the time. And then, I think right after that was when Nitro and all that stuff started, and I was like, man, forget this. I'm not going to do that at all.
Oh, Lord,
I can't imagine writing about that stuff all the time. And then now you listen to 3 or 4 daily, and it's like Brian's just, burned out on wrestling.
I know, and actually that's the real entertainment, is listening to him talking about it. Like I said, he does all the dirty work, so we can sit back and enjoy it in a strange, vicarious mood. We can sit back and laugh at these ridiculous concepts that they air on television each week, but we experience it through Brian Alvarez and the calmer Vinny.
I'm surprised people still do. They still recap TNA on 3 or 4 days. The person that writes about it on their website. Is there somebody writing about it?
To be honest, I haven't even taken notice.
Because I know there's the Raw guy still there, but is there a TNA guy? Because I know the AAA person always quits. Like AAA, the guy just gives, I think they've had 4 or 5 in the last.
I've honestly paid no attention to it. I couldn't tell you if it's been there or hasn't. I think every time I see TNA, I just keep moving. I mean, I will. I got to give WWE this. I'll at least turn on the TV sometimes and think, wonder what they're doing these days. Where TNA.
And Brian and Dave have to be a little more where they're not going to pay that person for doing it. Because if somebody sent me an article on TNA, I'd be like, dude, you want a couple of DVDs or something, or just free stuff. Here you could get some free stuff. Because I would just feel bad about the guy having to watch TNA.
Yes, yes, that would be painful. Owie.
Although this past week we probably should have watched it.
Well, I watched something so much more enjoyable last night than any of the present wrestling shows.
Yeah, but what could be more enjoyable than Orlando Jordan? The Orlando Jordan thing.
Yes.
We probably
10 years ago it would have been intriguing. But knowing that they're just going to... Oh, Lordy.
That would never be intriguing.
Oh.
It's too disturbing to discuss.
But last night, I finally watched 3 Dev Adam, the Turkish film that translates into 3 Mighty Men. Mm-hmm. This was the Turkish flick that we had heard so much about that features the Turkish El Santo and the Turkish Captain America battling the evil Spider. Now, Spider is basically a guy in a very discolored Spider-Man costume with awkwardly cut eye holes, and the coolest part is his eyebrows they flare out of the holes like Ox Baker.
God.
It is, oh my God.
Does he have a beard?
No, you don't see him under that mask.
Oh, okay. You just see the eyes.
You just see the evil eyelashes and those maniacal eyes, and he goes ha 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 many, many times. The funniest part, what I loved about this, is the police chief is at the airport because he's going to pick up Mr. Santo, as they call him, and Captain America. And who walks out of the airport but 2 gentlemen dressed very GQ, no Santo mask, no Captain America outfit. And so the police chief knows that these guys wear these outfits, and they only put these outfits on some of the occasions when they're fighting crime. So sometimes they just fight crime with their regular GQ look and, just show off their handsomeness. This was made in 1973. But the greatest part is when the Captain America character is talking with the police chief about the case that they're working on and how to get Spider, this, yada, yada, yada. The police chief says, I have just one more question. And he says, why do you guys wear masks and outfits while on duty? And his explanation, I'm paraphrasing here, but his explanation was something like, well, Spider is a very childlike villain, and he gets very upset when he sees anybody else wearing a costume like he does, and then he wants to destroy them.
Oh, so that's a good reason to wear a superhero outfit.
Exactly. There's no hidden identity. They just wear the costume to baffle and anger Spider.
Oh God!
Does
it have subtitles?
What's that?
Is it subtitled? It's subtitled.
It's subtitled.
Okay.
And I actually wrote Bixie about it, saying I got the subtitled flick, and he seemed pretty surprised that there was a subtitled version So
I think Dixie's on the line. Let me get him on.
Yeah.
Oh, he's on.
I wasn't
Dixie,
sure if I was.
you are on. You are so on.
Kurt, it's our new TNA recapper.
Oh.
What do you love about TNA, Bixie?
I like the part where Orlando Jordan started squirting a bottle of semen all over himself.
Should I go around? Oh my God! Oh my God! That's awesome.
Kurt, you should have just kept talking about the movie, like not no-sold it. Like,
yeah.
Well, what's awesome about this movie is the El Santo character. They show him showering, but he's wearing his white underwear. So instead of being kinky like Orlando Jordan, this El Santo from Turkey has serious body issues, so bad that he showers in his underwear.
Oh.
It was very fascinating.
Now, I presume these are fan subtitles. This is not an officially subtitled release.
No, in fact, the first 16 seconds of the movie, the subtitles are in Greek.
Oh.
I'm not joking, and the funniest part is there's an explanation for it, too. At the very beginning of the movie, they say that the first 16 seconds of the subtitled movie have been lost. So you see 16 seconds of the opening sequence in Greek, and then boom, English subtitles for the rest of the flick.
Why couldn't they just translate it? How could it be lost? Wait, someone's saying that there's... I'm looking at IMDb and now on Google, and someone's saying that there's an official English subtitled version.
Oh. Well, I got this at the wonderful Frank & Sons in City of Industry, California, which is right across the street from the AWS wrestling store.
Onar Films in Greece. Official release, available from HK Flicks and all those places. Puts the old bootlegs. Someone's saying it's not official, only available in PAL. But, well, I guess that's the origin of this, and that it probably came from that.
A very intriguing
it is an official
movie.
release. Oh, subtitles in English and Greek. Supposedly a better copy than all the bootlegs. Contains an extra 14 seconds at the start. That's the one.
Aha, so I got the special edition.
I'm going to have to go look at HK Flicks or whoever has this now and order it.
And after watching the movie, of course, the first thing I do is I go totally uber nerd, and I go to the computer and search it via Google. And I was equally ecstatic to find that Turkey has their own version of La Parka.
Oh, God.
Oh, it's out of print.
What's that?
It's out of print. This must be a couple years old. The IMDb post was a couple years old.
Yeah, the 1960s.
You might have to make me a copy then.
Yeah, the 1967 flicks. The character is called Kilink. K-I-L-I-N-K, and he's basically a guy in a skeleton costume who's a villain in a series, I think, of 3 movies, if I remember correctly. Mm-hmm. And he does all these terrible, awful things, but the one thing he uses as a tool is his sexuality. Women just, go crazy. Isn't that awesome?
Like
La Parka is a sex symbol.
Yeah. Well, it reminds me of, what was that, YouTube meme, Skeletor's dick will always rape you?
What? I never heard of this.
Let me look it up.
Oh, my Lord. Yeah, but this Killing character, he's like this diabolical lover, and the way he gets information from some of the women is by seducing him, promising them that he will make love to them if they, give up the scientist's secrets and that sort of thing.
Yeah, you have to look up Skeletor's dick on YouTube.
Skeletor's dick. I will have to do that. I'm making a note of that right now, so I'll know exactly what to do.
Feel the evil that penetrates you. Skeletor's dick will always rape you.
Kurt's searching right now. Wait,
well,
we got another caller. Wait, hold on.
We have another caller. Where is he?
Hello, is this Turkish Movie Talk?
I think Dan, are you searching for Skeletor's dick on YouTube?
No, I decided I'll let Kurt do that one. I'm going to pass on that one. Yeah,
but
exactly.
Dan, you know how it works.
I'm actually going to wait for the sequel to the movie where the Turkish attorneys try to defend against Marvel and Santo's family. That's going to be a very interesting movie.
I love it. Oh, that would actually be a great. That actually might make a good film that would actually surpass the Razzies and actually go straight toward the Academy Awards.
Yeah, I have to see. I have not seen this film all the way through. I need to see it because it almost sounds like a bad porno from the 1970s.
It's very reminiscent. Half the people in the flick and half the music that is played is in that same vein. Oh, and there's this awesome scene toward the beginning of the movie. The main protagonist in the female origin is a woman named Julia, and early in the flick, the police chief asks, I can't remember if it's Santo or Captain America, where is Julia? And he says, oh, she's at the fashion show. So they go to a fashion show, which is essentially a fashion show in somebody's apartment. And you see women just walking around the apartment showing off their gowns, and the best I could tell, it had nothing to do with the plot of the movie.
Oh, it's kind of like a diva match.
Well put. Well,
it's funny because it sounds very, very similar, obviously, to the blueprint of the Santo films and all those movies from the 1960s and into the 1970s. Those things are absolutely amazing, and it sounds like this one. It's really interesting because. As we talked about before, Santo's family is really hardcore about this kind of stuff.
Yeah, they'll figure it out sooner or later.
But then again, also overseas that way. I mean, even if you go down to some of the Mexican films, they were doing Frankenstein and basically copying the Universal Frankenstein, Dracula, the werewolf, the Wolfman, that kind of stuff. In the 1970s, and they would do little changes or whatever to try to make, like for example, in one of the films, the Wolfman is called Rufus. And Frankenstein's monster is oftentimes referred to as Frankenstein, like Kevin Steen. But it's fascinating how they do that, and it's not unusual. I have a movie from Egypt from the 1950s that. Is actually a almost shot-for-shot copy of Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein.
Oh my God! Amazing.
It is. I mean, there are scenes to it. I mean,
oh my God!
It's like it, and there, it just everything. There's this little things that there's all the sequences. Instead of a Frankenstein monster, it's a mummy. But it's I'll have to let you see it sometime. You'll find it absolutely amazing. And I showed it to friends. And the funny thing about it is there also is a Mexican version of that was done with Loco Valdez. I forgot the guy's name. He was a comic in Mexico, which is almost
Loco Valdez. Yes.
Yeah. Loco Valdez. Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you see some of the sequences, I mean, there are things that are just lifted shot by shot, frame by frame.
That is amazing.
And, there's a whole sequence in Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein where Costello winds up sitting on the monster's lap and does this whole thing where he feels around. And they do that scene, that entire thing there. The funny thing about the Egyptian film is done very, very cheaply. So, I mean, it's really low. It's real low budget. So
I'm starting to feel really guilty.
Adam was so low budget, I was just sitting there thinking, man, this makes the old black and white Santo movies actually look, rather artsy.
I'm starting to feel really guilty that I haven't watched my copies of Turkish Wizard of Oz or Turkish E.T. yet.
Oh. Just the mention of a Turkish Wizard of Oz gets me into a bad trip. It gets me into a bad cough syrup trip without even chugging any cough syrup, my lord.
The Turkish Wizard of Oz, and that would be fascinating.
Now, does anybody here ever remember the movie with Rutger Hauer called Turkish Delight?
That's an old film. I haven't seen it in years.
Early 70s.
Like the 70s? Yeah.
Yeah, early 70s. It was, I think, one of the first so-called art house films I ever saw when I was like 17 or 18, and I remember just finding it so repulsive and just thinking, oh, so this is what they call art? My God. And one of those at the Balboa Theater in Newport Beach years ago.
Yeah.
One of those little Renaissance houses.
It's wonderful. There was a company that was releasing a lot of the Santo films with really good subtitles and really nice copies. And I guess they just weren't that successful because they were doing that about 4 or 5 years ago, and they released about 7 or 8, and they stopped.
I picked up most of them, including my all-time favorite Santo flick, La Hacha Diabolica, which is one of the less bizarre Santo flicks when you look over the numerous Wolfman and Mummy movies he made. If I was going to recommend a Santo film to somebody who's never seen a Santo film, this would be my first pick, because essentially the film opens with like a bunch of monks carrying a coffin down into a tomb, and they say a quick prayer for El Santo, who is lying dead in the coffin, and it's like the 1600s. They talk about the painful life he had, and now he can be at rest. As soon as they leave the tomb, you just see this guy come out of nowhere in this black executioner's hood, and says, Santo, I will never let you rest. I will make all of eternity for you like just pure misery. And then the next thing you see, it's present day at Arena Coliseo, and El Santo's alive again, reincarnated and wrestling somebody there, and out of nowhere appears La Hacha Diabolica from his past life. And the whole film is essentially La Hacha Diabolica, translated meaning the diabolic acts, is just stalking Santo and just, trying to make life sheer misery and hell for him throughout the whole film. And it was like unusually creative.
Yeah, I mean, the funny thing about it is with those films, we always joke about them, but there were actually a handful of them that were really pretty kind of neat, actually. One of my favorites is Santo and the Treasure of Dracula, which is kind of a weird film. What they did was they decided they were going to do a remake of the original Dracula movie, so they just kind of did a framing thing with Santo at the beginning and the end, where they hypnotized the girl, and she went back into time, and they did the whole Dracula movie for about an hour. And then all of a sudden, Santo said, I must go back and help her, and they sent him back, and he killed Dracula, and that was it.
That is so awesome.
But it was funny, you were talking a few minutes ago about the Turkish Santo taking a shower, in his white skivvies or whatever. But aren't there a couple of those films where actually into the 70s and 80s when they would do love scenes or whatever, that the luchadors would actually wear their masks to bed when they would make love to a woman?
I've never seen one of those, but I have heard of one. I knew somebody who had a lobby card of a blue demon making love to a woman with his mask on. And
there was one from the 1980s, which is kind of ironic, because it's Octagon in bed with a woman. And but he's wearing his mask.
I love it.
Not everyone in AAA. Okay,
no, not everyone.
Well,
but,
sure.
But if life's a party, I don't know.
Just occasionally, it happens that way. But now we were talking about the movies or whatever. I told you earlier today, Kurt, that Dos Caras Jr. actually, I read, debuted on the European tour that WWE is doing over the weekend.
They didn't give him his mask back, though, did they?
Yeah, I think he
I didn't read. They did refer to him as Dos Caras, which was I kind of funny by that. They had him wrestle. He wrestled as a heel against Christian, and evidently, I mean, they even gave him the mic in the beginning where he basically was saying how great it was to be in Australia, and they were in Austria. A little cheeky like that. But, I mean, I don't know. Luchadors, with the exception of Rey Mysterio, have never had a good run in the WWE.
It's so true. Well, but
it'll be interesting to see what happens.
If Dos Caras does get a good run, then I say he has Junior Dos Santos to thank. Because it was a few months ago when Junior Dos Santos beat the living hell out of Mirko Cro Cop and thus delivering, like, because I told you the concept that when Dos Caras Jr. got knocked out by Mirko Cro Cop, that he actually knocked Dos Caras' second face out of his body and into the internet astral plane. And it wasn't until another person with a Dos in his name, avenged Dos Caras. And that's exactly what Junior Santos both did, beating him into oblivion. So Dos Caras has that missing face back. It's floated overseas. It's floated through time. It's even floated through Florida wrestling, my God.
The guy who did the recap for the show said that Christian and Dos Caras had a 3.5-star match. He said it was the best match on the show.
I'm not really surprised about that. I would say that if I was going to match anybody up with him, start, Christian's not a bad choice.
Yeah, Christian's always it's probably more Christian than Dos Caras.
Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. He was walking this earth for several years without that second face, and that's what he needed was rejuvenation. His face restored, thus his soul restored.
Well, he wasn't that bad when he first started. He wasn't that bad. Then he got really crappy.
Yeah, and that's why I say his soul was sucked from him. It can happen in an MMA ring, and souls actually die frequently in pro wrestling too. So for him to recover his soul, I think is a monumental event in the 21st century.
Yeah. Oh, what?
Yeah, I'm asking the same thing.
I'm just letting it sink in. That's all.
Yeah, I'm not certain what I just said, but I stick with it.
Anyway, both Dan Farren and Viva La Lucha were mentioned in the latest Classic Observer on the Observer.
Oh, really?
site.
Really?
Which one? What was that about?
Is Dan still looking for his FMW tape?
No. This one.
I got my FMW tape. I'll have you know.
This one's better. The nearly 8 feet tall Giant Gonzalez debuted in a 1-on-3 match against Louis Piccoli, Scott Basso, and a guy billed as Dan Farren. Dan Farren is the co-editor of Viva La Lucha, wrestling newsletter, and an indie ref, timekeeper, and whatever. Wait, Viva La Lucha is an indie ref? Dave can never write. Whatever in Southern California. It wasn't Dan Farren, but Augie Loya using Farren's name. Anyway.
Yeah, actually, as you know, the other co-publisher was Kurt Brown.
Yeah.
But what was funny about that was when Augie Loya had wrestled his Thunder Machine, and when he would do the tapings, they would say to him, well, you can't, that's too colorful a name, and I guess, and his name Augie Loya alone was too colorful a name, so he thought it'd be a good rib to use my name. And so he used it on that one. And that match actually for the longest time was on YouTube, because all it really was they did there, Spicoli took one bump for Giant Gonzalez, and then all three of them ran out of the ring and were counted out.
Right.
The sad thing about it, though, and just the way things are, is that the Dan Farren character, Augie Loya, is the only one still alive on that team.
That's right.
Scott and Louie are both gone.
It is on YouTube. It is still on YouTube. If you look up Dan Farren on YouTube.
Very, very cool. In fact, I think I did an internet movie database,
you did,
saying that Dan Farren was once portrayed by Augie Loya.
Well, the funnier thing was they did some tapings down in Long Beach right after that, and Augie was on the show again. And what's really funny is I do have both those matches, because what's kind of neat about it is I have one match where Vince McMahon says my name and another match where Jim Ross says my name.
So your match was called by the greatest wrestling commentator in history.
Exactly. But what was funny was what they were going to do was they originally were going to have Augie in this tag team match with an old friend of yours.
With the Steiners.
Against the Steiners.
Yes.
But he was teaming up with Moondog Moretti. And the thing was, they were Scott had talked to him, and they weren't sure he was a little too big maybe to take the Frankensteiner. So what they did was they had Mike Enos working there under a hood, and they called him the Prowler. Well, I guess what happened was Mike McGurk was still doing the ring announcing, and no one got word to her that they had made the switch. So they do all the introductions, and here's this so and so, and they go to the mask guy, and they introduce the mask guy as Dan Farren.
Oh, that's awesome.
which may be
awesome.
like the only time I've ever seen, like, it's like, here's a mascot I like named Bob Johnson or something. It just seems, and the funny thing is you're watching it, Mike Edith steps forward and they say, Dan Farren, and his hand goes up like halfway and it's like, what? That's that one.
Oh, so that's something I could add to Internet Movie Database. You were portrayed by two different performers.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And the funny thing about it, here's the even the better trivia, Kurt, on this one is, there are these two guys, teenagers, sitting next to me, and they're going, Dan Farren, Wrestle Talk, because I used to do a lot of the Wrestle Talk shows back then.
Yeah.
And I turned to the guys and said, no, I said, that's not Dan Farren. I'm Dan Farren. And they're like, yeah, right. So I pulled out my driver's license and showed it to them. And that was the first time that I met Byron and Craze, the neighborhoods.
Oh, no way.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, my God.
Who eventually became two guys who trained and eventually worked on some of the cars we promoted.
That's right. I remember. I even got to work with them and Chaos and Supreme when Frankie D and I did the masked gimmick Los Paparazzis for one of Johnny Legend's shows.
Yeah.
And Doug working with Craze especially. Actually, Doug working with all of them, but Craze especially.
Craze especially, yeah. But that was always so funny. That always broke me up. That I had, I was probably the first masked man with a full name in the history of wrestling.
Oh, great!
And I was right because Dave used to refer to me as Dan Farren, who's done like everything.
And it's so true. I think you've worked almost every gig you could in the wrestling business.
Yeah, I was a timekeeper for the UWF for Herb Abrams for a short period of time.
And you got stiffed on your payoff.
I got stiffed on the payoff, but then that was a big club. And then I did some ring announcing. I was commissioner of, I think, about 10 or 12 different groups at one time or another. I don't even remember anymore. All I know is I would start to say welcome to, and I would stop and have to look at the sign to figure out which group it was.
The equivalent of Ernie Ladd referring to everybody as Mr. TV announcer because he couldn't remember. Mr. TV
announcer, yeah. So I did that. I refereed. I was forced into wrestling once or twice. And so I basically have done everything. Yeah, and I promoted, and I've done everything. And now, and I ran a pretty good dressing room. So hey,
You ran a damn good dressing room. I got to tell you, a lot. I know it's one of those things that shouldn't be difficult, but for a lot of people these days, it seems to be very difficult.
Yeah, it's fun.
As we're reminiscing, I think it's only appropriate that we bring up our old friend Stephen DeLeon as this past April 6th marks 6 years since we lost him. And scores of Stephen memories around that time every year just kind of pour through my mind. And I think you actually met Stephen a few years before I did. I met him in 1988 at Gill's Gym. And
yeah, I had met Stephen. He was still just a real kind of pudgy babyface kid, and who idolized Roddy Piper. And he and Ricky Ataki and Louis Spicoli hung around together. And I know that our friend Outhouse Danny Wolf used to always go to the wrestling matches. I always would call him that. And Stephen would always be one of the guys hanging around the hotel afterwards. And he didn't have like a classic wrestler look. I mean, it was one of those situations where he, both him and Ricky Ataki, if they had just popped in 3 or 4 years one way or the other, they might have, had even a better run than they sometimes did. But I met him through there, and Johnny Legend, when we first started doing the Hollywood heavyweight wrestling shows in 1990, we put him on some of the shows there, and he was just a real solid, good, from a wrestling standpoint, he was a solid, good worker. I never heard any complaints from anyone who ever had to work with him. And above and beyond that, he was just an upright and stand-up guy, and that was the main thing.
And one of those guys, he was a great artist too. I'm sorry?
He was a great artist too. He drew.
He was very good. Yeah, he drew some great sketches. Somewhere I have a sketch of his that he just made in one night of all the students at Billy's school saying, funny little lines and that kind of thing. I mean, he's one of those guys. he was like a shot of happiness when you were having a bad day if you ran into him.
Yeah.
It's just like when you saw him, you know, and you were a friend of his, he would light up like you were the family he had not seen in years.
Yeah.
And in fact, when I posted something about him on Facebook, Carol Hernandez, you know, posted a response saying, I miss Stefan's smile and I miss those big hugs he gave. And it's so true.
Yeah.
When he came up and hugged you, you'd swear you were reunited with a family member you had not seen in years.
Well, what I always miss about Stephan was the fact that he just had this wonderfully devilish sense of humor. And I know that we've talked about this story before, but we were doing one of those incredibly strange shows.
Oh, yes, I know what you're... Yeah, I love this story.
Where Foreign Object was performing on it, his band. And they, for some reason, on the same bill, the guy who was running the room wanted to have Screech, Dustin Diamond from Saved by the Bell, had a band at that time because, you know, the guy there's somebody who's done everything from music to porn and back again. But he had a band and they played, and it was over. And what happened was, Foreign Object goes on and starts to perform, and in like the height of rudeness, Screech's band starts packing up and walking back and forth behind them and around them and whatever while they're doing their set. So, you know, so they were doing it over and over again, and Stephan was getting madder and madder and madder, and I don't know exactly what happened, but I went outside a little bit later on, and Screech's band had all the stuff in the van, and they were on the street there, and they were about to pull away, and there was an alley that way there, and the gate was shut, and Stephan and his band was like reaching through the gate, like trying to get at him and screaming and cursing at him, and Screech's band looked petrified, and they jumped in the van, they drove away, and I stood there and I looked at Stephan through the gate, and I said, now what would you have done if you had got your hands on them? And he smiled at me, and he took his hand and he pushed the gate open, which was unlocked the entire time.
I love that story. That was so great. And that just spells his sense of humor totally.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, just a joy to be. And it's funny, you're saying he's kind of like this kind of pudgy baby-faced kid, but women got crushes on him right and left. I'll never forget that. I mean, he just had this infectious personality. In fact, I remember at his funeral, his girlfriend at the time was, you know, speaking about him, and she was recalling about how when she really, like, you know, fell hard for him, she said, like, you're my dream man. And Stephan's response was, wait a minute, your dream man is an overweight Mexican?
Well, you were a tag team with him for a while, too, weren't you?
I teamed with him.
Because remember, I put you together with him when he was doing his Anarchy gimmick.
That's
and you
right.
were doing Vandal Drummond, and we had you guys, you were the architects of Anarchy.
That's right. I love that term.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to remember, did you come up with that term or Johnny?
I did. That one was mine, actually.
Great. That was great.
It may sound like Johnny's because Johnny has the love of alliteration. So everything was always like Gravel Gut Gomez, you know, Homer House.
He loved the name more than he loved the wrestler. It's like anybody could have played the wrestler as long as their name was announced. He just took pride.
Exactly.
Yeah, I wrestled, and I also wrestled Stephan once in '93 on one of Alex Knight's shows. In fact, I remember you and Mary Lou were there.
Yeah.
And he was so easy to work with. It's like you'd never blow up with him. And I mean, even though he didn't have much in the department of stamina, he looked like he was full of energy in that ring. He was just a very dynamic personality, and I think if he really wanted to do the business full time, he would have, had a good chance.
Yeah, I think so too. And the fact was also, from what you always heard about him, was that, you know, when he went in and when he went to work with like the WWF guys at that time, no one ever complained about working with him because he always, you know, he trusted the guys, did whatever, you know, what they told him they were going to do this. And even if he wasn't sure about it, he was still young enough and a kid enough at that point to say, well, I'll do it anyway. I remember talking to him after seeing him in a match with the Rougeaus one time. And the Rougeaus were doing that thing where they had the guy up on the shoulders and then they would jump off and the guy would kind of, you know, do that sit down. Yeah, I'd sit down. And I said to Stephen, I said, so how do you take that and not be hurt? And he goes, you don't. It was just they were just really stiff, and that's what they did. And when he hit that way. There was someplace though recently, Kurt. I saw some ad. It may have been on one of some tape or whatever, but it was a WWE tape, and there was actually a quick cut of Stephen in the squash match. Yeah.
Wow.
I'll have to find out where it was again. But,
yeah,
but I saw it, and I just said to Mary Lou, I rolled it back, and she goes, "What's that?" And I said, "It's Stephen."
Wow. Yeah, in fact, I know I have the tag team match we have on tape, and I know there's a copy of the tape where I wrestled him on Alex's show. I'd love to have that just for posterity, but
yeah,
he's one of my other good memories of Stephen. You know, usually he was the top dog, the prankster, if you know, shenanigans were happening. But we were at one of the incredibly strange shows in San Francisco, and we were in the dressing room, and it was a rather cramped place. And one of the funny things about Stephen was he was a huge fan of anything that was like anti-corporation. You know, he hated the whole corporate music scene. He loved the old groups like Dead Kennedys, Fear, Black Flag. I mean, and oddly enough, Devo. I guess Devo was one of his favorite bands, which, you know, most people from that school aren't into. But this was like in '95, and it was, you know, during the grunge era, and he did not like Nirvana, he did not like Green Day, and he could not stand Courtney Love. You know, to him it was all like, you know, manufactured corporate rock and roll.
Yeah.
And he was the only one of us who really felt that way. And in that dressing room, there were some speakers, and just some clueless DJ in the club was actually accidentally cranking a bunch of music into our dressing room. And I think there was some stuff that Stephen liked. And then that Courtney Love song, or I should say Hole, their song Violet, just starts blasting loud. And Stephen's like, oh, I got to get out of here. This is awful. And I think it was me, Frankie, Little Sergio, and Bill Judd. We loved that song, and we just started getting into it, and we just started screaming it. And the funniest part is Stephen at the moment was wearing his mask, his anarchy mask. And after us singing it as loud as we could for about 20 seconds, he has his hands over his ears and is shaking his head. Will you guys stop singing, goddammit? It was just like one of the heel wrestlers, like Crazy Luke Graham, when people would chant crazy and he'd go nuts. It was another fond Stephen moment, and just one guy I really, really miss a lot.
Yeah, he was one of a kind. He really, truly was.
Yes. Well, another subject that we definitely have to bring up tonight.
You know what, though? I'd like to, can I jump in just real quick?
Of course.
I have a question, like for Fredo and for Bix, and that is, I heard you guys talking about TNA. And don't ask me what I thought of it because I don't watch it. But I was wondering, with both you guys, what are you guys watching these days?
I don't really watch TNA that much. I mean,
just anything. I mean, wrestling, anything, Ring of Honor, old stuff, anything.
Mostly what's on TV and old stuff for me.
Yeah.
Some AAA sometimes, and sometimes indie lucha on YouTube.
How about you, Fredo?
I watch lucha, and I have to watch for Japanese wrestling.
Yeah,
because I kind of know a little bit about it.
I will watch. I will usually at least thank God for the DVR because you can just virtually scan through everything. I still have a great love for shoot tapes, mainly because either they're really good or they're a real big lie.
Yeah,
and either way they're fun. But I forgot sometimes. I picked up the Heart Foundation DVD that came out this week, and found a lot of really kind of fun stuff match-wise on that and stuff. And I hate to be one of those guys that just likes to sit and watch, some of the older matches, but in a way they really do. And I don't think I watch them because, it reminds me of the old days or whatever. I just think I watch them because they're good.
Well, the thing is, like with TNA and WWE, I just think they're pretty much just skipping. I I mean, I don't know. It just doesn't seem like they're even trying, you know, like to come up with stuff or what we used to like. So it's like, what's the point of watching it?
Yeah, and you were mentioning, Dan, about how, you know, it's not so much that we're living in the past or stuff like that. I mean, maybe we are to some extent, but I think, in fact, I know that the real reason is I'm a sucker for ambience.
Yeah.
And I love the ambience of old school wrestling. I know you can give a dozen analogies or explanations why that's silly and how this is what the business is today. It is what it is, and you can't change it. And I know you can't, but I still love the ambience of old school wrestling. I just love the feel of it, especially the TV studio feel when you're watching TV studio wrestling. There's just something really almost like comfort food about it.
And
it reminds me of being a little kid on a Saturday night, you know?
And the crowd reactions, like on all the old Crockett stuff, with all how just loud they were.
Yes, amen to that. Totally.
And it was always funny too, because being in a small area like that, it was always fun to watch Flair, somebody like Flair, or somebody who was a really good interview work with that, because they would have something from the crowd, because the crowd was close enough they could hear. Yeah. And you would see, you could listen to Flair, and Flair would start doing an interview and realize that he was not getting the kind of reaction he wanted to. So he would do one of those great looking off in the distance and saying, "Shut up, fat boy," just something to get the crowd going that way. And the same thing with the Memphis the matches. I think one of the reasons why I enjoy watching the Memphis stuff so much is for the studio wrestling and for Lance Russell.
Well, like with TNA, you would think they would be able to do that because it's a small building. The impact is kind of small, but I mean the whole show, the way it's just written is, I mean it's so. You just don't really. I mean, as long as Vince Russo's running it, you just don't have any hope for it. It's just going to.
Well, yeah. I mean, as they always joke about all the time, whatever the most recent angle is, it depends on what movie that Vince Russo has seen the night before. And I think somebody said recently that he must have seen Saw recently because he keeps doing these things with all these keys.
Yeah,
getting keys to lock things.
Where did he see the Orlando Jordan thing?
The thing I said was that I actually was sort of had to give him credit for not doing anything where a wrestler got covered in spooge for 12 years after Something About Mary came out.
Phil Hendry's Spooge Demon Open.
Yeah, you don't see Hornswoggle doing that, I tell you.
Oh, God, you just painted this visual of Hornswoggle taking a money shot. How am I going to sleep tonight? Oh, my God.
Oh, God. Well, but it is true about that. And, here's the thing that's really frustrating to me is, I can't, I'm not going to keep bashing TNA because, truthfully, I don't watch it, and I don't want to be one of those people that bashes something I don't watch. But, it's like the old saying, I don't know art, but I know what I like. So I don't, that's how I feel about TNA.
It's like Louis Armstrong said similarly, there's two kinds of music, good and bad, and that's purely subjective.
Or you can say that TNA is like obscenity. I know it when I see it.
Yeah, exactly. Or watching TNA is like hitting yourself over the head with a hammer because it feels good when you stop. But the thing is, the one thing that's frustrating to me sometimes is when you watch sometimes, because I don't buy pay-per-views anymore because they're just way too expensive and too many of them. I would rather rent them or get them for $15 when they come out at Best Buy or whatever a month and a half later. That way I know what's on there if I want to see it.
Yeah.
But the thing is that when I watch those shows, with the WWE, what's frustrating is I know they know how to put together a really compelling match because you see things like Shawn Michaels and The Undertaker or certain things the way they do them. And I guess it just irritates me because if they know how to do it and they just choose not to for whatever reason, it's just sloppy. And that's what's annoying about it because you watch a match and you go, how can something like that be so good? And then, I truthfully feel sorry for the Divas. I really and truly do because, first of all, I watched that Battle Royal on Monday night, and how none of them broke a leg at one point or other going out of the ring, I don't know.
That is amazing, actually.
They do those girls such a disservice because they give them a little bit of training. That's all, they give them, 30 seconds once a week to work, they're not going to learn anything from that.
Yeah, even the simplest concepts like just, even just general posture when you're going to lock up, you could tell nobody's showing them that. If I remember that one Fullerton show where there was a tag team match and all 4 kids were self-trained with each other, and they did the most amazing high spots. I mean, stuff that they thought of themselves, and the topes and everything that they did were just astounding looking. But when they went to lock up with each other, it looked like, pasta locking up with pasta, just all floppy.
Yeah.
And
that's great.
You know what that reminds me of? Fredo, do you remember that Stampede show when that had that Rats match on it, like at the beginning of the decade? It was like a Stampede show with Lance Storm on it.
Yeah, like with Jack Evans and all those guys?
Yeah, and it was like incredible. Like all the moves were incredible.
Yeah.
And when they weren't doing a big high spot, it was the absolute worst thing you've ever seen.
It's basically a Teddy Hart type of match.
Come as you are, do what you want match.
Yeah, Teddy Hart, just let him do all his high spots, and that's all he does.
Winner doesn't have to listen to what the booker says. But neither does the loser.
Just let him jump off the turnbuckle and he's happy. Just let him go.
That's the one thing I don't get from TNA. The one thing I kind of liked was the women's, like the knockouts.
Yeah.
Not that bad, and all of a sudden they just got really bad. Like like everybody just started leaving. Also, amazing song leaving and.
Oh, by the way, speaking of winners, Kurt, do we have a winner?
Oh.
I'm so glad you asked because we do not. I'm amazed that somebody got answered the question to our first quiz before this quiz. We had 2 guesses.
And this one I would think would be easier to guess, too.
Yes, and for those of you who didn't hear the last show, the trivia question is, which pro wrestler, with a slightly altered name for the comic, was the subject of a Tijuana Bible? And for those of you unfamiliar with Tijuana Bibles, these were a series of pornographic comic books that were produced from, I believe, starting in the 1920s and lasted up through the 60s. And the 2 guesses I got, and my favorite guess of these, our good friend Dave Musgrave asked if it was Cavernario Galindo.
You told me that. Yeah.
And, and I never thought of this before, but I started laughing, and I said, you didn't win the contest, but I'm sending you something anyway, because that was just too great an answer. And it made me think, Cavernario Galindo, who had this really awesome physique when he was younger, but the ugliest face, it reminded me of a Robert Crumb drawing, like Devil Woman or something like that.
Well, Robert Crumb, didn't he get his start doing the Tijuana Bibles?
No, actually, he got to start doing greeting cards, of all things.
Why did I think he did Tijuana Bibles?
I mean, maybe
there has to be some influence in there at one point, though.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I'm certain there's probably some influence.
But pretty much all the underground stuff from the 60s and 70s looks that way, too.
Yes. So for all of you out there, that is what the trivia question is, which pro wrestler...
Who was the other guess? Yeah.
Oh, the other guess? I am so sorry. This one baffled me. Chris Cruz. And one of the hints I gave was that this was a wrestler that was active pre-1960. So unless you know something about past live careers, no, Chris Cruz is not the answer. I guess there was a character in the Tijuana Bibles called Chris Krusty, but nope, keep on guessing, people, because I'm going to
Are you going to give a hint, though, or anything, Kurt?
I'm going to give a further hint.
Like a time frame, maybe?
Well, I was going to give a hint, but I mean, I'll say this. I mean, it's not necessarily a hint, and then I'll let you go.
Okay.
You have to keep in mind that they were parodying, the big stars of the day. So you have to. This person was one of the top drawing cards and biggest stars in pro wrestling of that era.
Yes.
The very biggest.
Exactly, and I'll go even a little further with a bit more of a hint. I said this wrestler was active pre-1960s, and I'll go further and say his glory years were before 1950. Before 1950. Those were his glory years.
And I'll add another hint that I believe, didn't he also share a nickname with a favorite of yours?
Yes, this is true. You're right. It took me a second to think of that.
It's Martin Kardashian.
That's right.
What's the Martin Kardashian?
Martin Kardashian.
Kim Kardashian's father, yes.
I thought he said Martin Kardashian. Well, they're both Armenian.
This is true. We've got to do a marching theme song for the Kardashian family, and they should change it to Kardashian. They'd get a lot more mileage out of the careers. I guarantee it. I want to say, I'm doing this trivia contest similar to the old Beat the Champ TV title that we used to watch on Channel 13 when we were kids. And the storyline for that...
Belt?
What's that?
The bar clothing belt? Wasn't that it? For
if I had the bar... For you folks out there who are post-70s people, they had the Beat the Champ belt was sponsored by Bars Clothing. Was Bars Clothing like one of those ones for portly and tall men or something like that?
It may have been, but it was a really old school clothing store.
And their advertisements were actually live on the set of Channel 13.
Yeah. See, I think it'd been funny if it had been an actual belt. Just a regular belt, a man's belt. Yeah.
I love it.
By the way, I just feel like I have to just to read, maybe somehow this will help someone get it, I have to read this line that's spoken by the protagonist of the Tijuana Bible.
Okay.
When he is fornicating with the ring rat, he says, in what's implied to be some sort of accent, "I like a tattoo on nice titty. Get 'em all hot, huh?"
Oh, Lord. So some people know how to make a living back in those days.
It's too Les.
No. Well, like I was starting to say.
Oh, and it ends with him farting as he climaxes.
That's right. Yes. Pure art, pure class. But the reason I brought up the Beat the Champ belt is one of the angles with the Beat the Champ belt was it was defended every Saturday night on TV, and if the challenger did not win it from the champion, then the challenger who was trying to take the title the following week would win a little extra bounty money. They would raise the money prize each week from, would start off at like $500, and then the next week, if the guy was still champ, the bounty would be $600, $700.
Cornette borrowed the idea in Smoky Mountain.
That's right.
And
he admits that too.
Did anyone do that other than those two?
And there may have been, but because it sounds like the kind of thing that would have been perfect for the 1950s, a lot of the live TV. But I haven't heard that much about it. And whenever anybody brings something like that up, I remember Cornette talking about he got that idea from the L.A. Beat the Champ belt.
So anyway,
and I remember what you said, like it would be like $300 or $400. I remember one time I got as high as $1,000, I think.
Wow.
Yeah. Wow. And while I always
thought what they should do is the loser has to work in the bar clothing store for a week.
Oh, that would be sweet. That'd be a great angle.
And
the reason I brought up the Beat the Champ title, the bounty going up each week, is I have no $1,000 to give anybody, and even if I did, I'd probably not give it away.
You're going to go in the garage
and get some
throwing stuff out of there.
What's that?
You're going to go in the garage and get some old stuff.
Of course. I'm a low-rent championship wrestling Beat the Champ fan. I actually have two things I'm going to throw into the loot. In addition to all the fun stuff like the 2 CDs and the used copies of the 5 Deadly Venoms and the Foul King and the Best of Cactus Jack, I'm also throwing in, believe it or not, 2 DVDs, still new in wrapper. One is called TV Mania, a Johnny Legend release that is a retrospective on old TV commercials that feature celebrities from the Marx Brothers to Lucy and Desi and the Three Stooges, all sorts of good stuff. And
Does it have the Flintstones Winston cigarettes commercial?
I don't think it does because it's not mentioned on the back here. That is the greatest commercial of all time, in my opinion, the Flintstones Winston.
Oh, yeah, you put that on one of your hallucination columns.
That's right. That's right. I love that commercial. And then I'm also throwing in a new and rapper copy of an old Hong Kong flick called The Mission. I have no idea what it's about, just I see on the cover everybody is holding guns.
Movie?
I'm
is
sorry?
Is that an early Jackie Chan movie?
No, not Jackie Chan, directed by some cat named Johnny To. Sorry, the only names I recognize off the top of my head are Simon Yam and Anthony Wong. But Hong Kong movies are bitching whether they're good or bad, so that's a little extra bounty I'm throwing in there. So send in your guesses, and as always, I'll probably even throw in a few other things, which Dan said last week very sarcastically are a bunch of old programs I came across. I will neither confirm or dispute that. We'll see what I find.
Just save them up, Kurt, and take them to a Wrestle Reunion next year. That's all.
There's a great idea. Idea. Or Frankenstein's.
Rent out a table.
That would be great. Vandal's old loot.
If I had known where this Orlando Jordan thing would have gone, because you guys remember he was there back in January. What is that there's a great video to be shot somehow with that. But I mean, that was the Orlando Jordan was at the Wrestle Reunion because he is involved in and this is what's so funny about it, because I remember they were talking about it, is him and Gangrel and Rikishi, and they all three were there, and they were supposedly doing some sort of wrestling school.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I do remember that.
The other thing was they were saying, somebody told me that what they also do is they're available, so if your kid has a birthday party or something,
yeah,
even if they don't wrestle, they'll come out and serve pizza and stuff like that.
Lenny Lane does birthday parties.
Yeah.
I love it. Instead of getting a clown for your birthday, you get Rikishi.
So I figure, Kurt, when's your birthday?
It just passed, March 13th.
Doggone it, we missed it. I was going to say maybe we'll see about Fredo, but we need to pick a birthday because I want to have Gangrel serve me pizza.
Oh, that'd be sweet. Well, Mary Lou's birthday's coming up, isn't it?
Mary Lou's birthday is Monday, yeah.
Dan, remember to keep
there you go.
But Dan, I have special plans for that, not this year, but in the next year. Well, what Mary Lou and I like to do, we've been married for 29 years, and what we do every few years is we like to renew our vows in strange. The last time we did it, we renewed our vows on July 7th, 2007 in Las Vegas by an Elvis impersonator.
That is so cool.
And the next one we're going to do, probably for the 30th, is Jane Weedland of the Go-Go's.
Mm-hmm.
is a ordained minister in California, and she is available for weddings. So we're going to renew our vows with one of the Go-Go's.
That would be wicked awesome.
I don't think
that
any
would be
wrestling.
So cool.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Nope.
I was going to say that I don't think any wrestling-related birthday, though, can top the story of how Vince Russo booked Brian Last's bar mitzvah.
Oh, God, I haven't heard that story for a long time. That's a great one.
Yeah.
Tell the story. It's great.
Brian would call into Vince Russo's radio show a lot, which, Skull Von Crush would be on a lot, and his mom ended up coming up with the idea of hiring Vince Russo and Skull Von Crush to entertain at the bar mitzvah. And somehow it involved Skull Von Crush selling for Brian.
Wow.
And of course, yes, you have to remember, a Nazi German character at this bar mitzvah full of old Jews.
Oh my God. Only in pro wrestling. Well, not only in pro wrestling, but...
And that was the first thing he ever booked.
That's amazing.
Yeah. and it's been downhill ever since.
That would be a hell of a way to start off the memoir. Oh my
God.
Lord. Well, I think it's time to wind this up. I wish I didn't have to get up early in the morning because I could keep this thing going all night. But I have some things I must attend to.
You can't because they cut us off at 2 hours.
You're right, exactly. We'd have to get a different
That's right.
store.
Is the scrapbooking show up next? Is that what's on next after this?
That's next Turkish scrapbooking.
Is Gongrel scrapbooking? How to scrapbook?
Yeah, there you go.
Oh, that would.
Or Orlando Jordan's 101 Things to Do with a Pint of Milk. Yeah.
Now there's a pay-per-view for you.
That
there
looks
you go.
too gelatinous to be milk.
I love the fact Bix is so fascinated by that. It's like
the funniest thing out of this whole thing was when Brian was recapping the show, and then Dave's like, "Was that milk?" Brian just kept going like.
But it was the opposite.
Yeah, he should have just said, "No, I think it was cum."
Oh God!
End it right there.
I love it. That's too much, man. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, gotta wind this baby up. So
time to go home.
Time to go home, babies. Time to go home.
Yeah.
Oh, and as Dan taught us, when the announcer raises his pen, it is time to go home.
That's the time to go home. So everybody out there, flick your big pens, and remember, if you're ever walking through Southern California on a starry night and you see something streaking across the sky, it is not a shooting star. Nuh-uh. It is a heavenly handful of Moncel's powder. See you all in 2 weeks.